Hi, and welcome back to another tutorial on group policies on our domain controller. We'll be working on the organizational units. We'll create different organizational units, then we'll create the group policies that would enforce various options in our domain services, and then we'll try to apply those policies to groups and computers on our network. Now, if you remember, we worked on Active Directory domain services and DNS in our previous tutorial. If you're interested in that, you can find the video on our channel. Now let's get started. This is our server 2019, and we'll have to set up certain things on it. So first of all, we'll go to the server manager. So click start and go to server manager. Here you'll have to click on tools and then select Active Directory users and computers. Once you're there, it would show you a list of features that we have. You can click on manage services, domain controllers, computers, and you can even find the computer that we added to our list since it was joined to the domain, so it appeared over here. Now if you'll click on users, you can see different groups, distribution groups, etc. But we'll click on the main domain and then we'll click on new, and we'll create an organizational unit from here. Now first of all, whenever we are creating an organizational unit, you'll have to give it a name, and the reason is that we want to create different organizational units so that we can separate the user. So we'll give it a name as sys255, and you can see that I'm keeping it checked as protect container from accidental delete, because we don't want that if by mistake we'll press a delete key, it would delete the organizational unit and the contents under it. So in order to protect it, we'll keep it protected and we'll press OK. So as you can see, we have an organizational unit over here by the name of SYS255. Now let's try to delete it and see what happens. And as you can see that it's not letting us delete it, since as I told you that there is a procedure for that. If we want to delete it, there would be a specific way to delete that, but we'll cover it sometime later. Let's try to look at our organizational unit and try to create a sub-organizational unit in that, and let's name it accounts over here. So it would be created under our sys255. Let's create another one, and the same way we are going to name it as computers, and the third one where we will create another one and would name it as groups. And once that's done, we'll press OK. So now we have three sub-organizational units under our main organizational unit, which is sys255. Now if we'll click on account and we want to create new accounts, we'll go to new and we'll select user. We'll enter the details of our user as the first name, last name, and full name. As you can see, I have entered the details. And then you can select a username over here and press next. So it would take you to a next screen. You can enter a password, or you can check the option that the user must change the password on next logon. So it would ask the user to change the password. It's always a good practice so that they have a unique password. Press next and finish. So you can see that we have an account of Elise over here. And if you want to see the settings in this one, you can even enter the email address. If you'll go to accounts, you can enter some more details, and under account you have some options over here, like you can decide if you would like to allow the user to log in at specific hours, or if you want to restrict them to log in from some specific computers. And if the account is locked out, and you can just click on unlock and the account would be unlocked. And you can even select some of the other options, followed by the expiry date of the account. So if you want the account to expire after a set number of days or in a specific date, you can select it from here. In profile, if you have roaming profiles and if you're using filers on your network, you can select the path over here. So once the user would log in, they would be able to see the attached drives. And in member of, if the user is part of any specific groups, they will appear over here. So we'll work on that shortly, and I'll show you how can we add users to different groups via this screen, or maybe in a different way. Now We created one account. We'll create two more accounts. As you can see, now I have three accounts: Alice, Bob, and Charlie. And we don't have anything on computers, but we'll try to add something in computers shortly. But our accounts are there. Now if you remember, we created a computer, we joined a computer to the domain, so that's there. If you want to drag that computer and drag it to be a part of a specific group, you can put it in that, and it would give you a warning. You can read it and just press OK. So now if I'll click on computers, it would appear under my computers. Now that's how you add users to different organizational units, so that you can separate them, and if you want to apply certain policies, you can apply them by simply adding them to a group. Now let's try to create a group over here, and if we right click on it, and we'll create a group. And there are different options in this one. We have group type as security and distribution. So security is used if you're assigning different permissions to folders and entities like that. And for distribution group, it is used for email distribution if you want to create certain aliases and want to use it with your Exchange server. We'll use distribution groups. But since we are applying a security policy, so I'll name it as custom desktop. So that would be a security policy, and I want it to be available to all users, but I'll select the users on which this policy will be applied, and we'll see it later. But at the moment, we'll just press OK. So you can see the policy over there. We have the users, and now if I'll open it and I'll go to member of and I'll add it over here. So that was a group, and I want to add users to that custom desktop group. I can check the name and it would appear over there, or I can add and I can find the users by their names, and we can find the group from this one, which would be custom desktop, and click OK. So now this user would be a part of this group, which is custom desktop. That's one way of adding the users. Now the other way is that we can go to the group, a security group, and we can click on members, and I can click add, and by clicking on add, it would give me the same option that I can either search the user by the name, or I can simply by just enter the name, click OK, it would add it, or you can click on add and click on advanced and then find the user either by typing the name of it, or you can find it directly from the list and press OK. It would be added to the list, but since I have added, I'm not going to add it again. So these are two different ways by which you can add the users, and if you want to check, go to members and you'll be able to see the users which you recently added. Now once that's done, let's go to the server manager and let's try to work on the group policies. So in order to do that, we'll click on tools on our server manager and we'll click on group policy management. Now it would open this interface that would be related to the group policy management, and you can expand these things to see the domain name and different other options that we have. Let's expand it a little bit. And then you'll be able to see your organizational unit as is 255. But if you'll notice one thing, we have a default domain policy which is attached automatically to all computers on the network. Now if we would like to edit this default policy, which is there by default from Microsoft, you can edit it as well. But the policy which is here, it's related to the password complexity and some of the basic things which are required, so you can edit it if you want. Right click on it and select edit, so you'll be able to edit if you want to edit the policies related to computer. Let's expand, and then you'll be able to see different Windows options and stuff. But if the settings are related to the users, you can select that as well and select the appropriate options for the computers. So that's how we set different policies on the computers, and they'll be reflected on all computers which are joined to the domain. Now let's try to see and create a small group policy for our organizational unit, which is 255, And if we'll open it and we would like to add a policy, we'll right click on sys255 and we'll create a group policy object for this domain. And once we'll click on it, we can give it a name over here, and let's select a name which we can choose as sys255 desktop and click OK. So now we'll have a thing over here where it would show us that we have just added a policy over here, and now if we want, we can have different options. But since we are going to attach it to the users, which are our desktop users or authenticated custom desktop users, so in order to do that, I would click on add and I would select the users from this one, which is in our group as we created as a custom desktop, and I'll click on this one and press OK. So now you can see that the custom desktop users would have the policy enforced on it which we have recently created. Now if you don't want to keep the authenticated users over here, you'll click remove and it would be removed from there and press OK. So now you'll have only one in this one. Now we would like to add domain computers to the security filtering. So in order to do that, I'll click on add and I'll type in domain computers over here and check name. It found it. Otherwise you can click on advanced, find now, and then you can type in domain. So you'll be able to see domain computers here as well. Once that's done, press OK and you can see now it's added to the list. The next thing we are going to do is to set up the permissions on our domain computer. So for that we'll have to go to delegation. Here we'll select domain computers, and once that's done, I'll click on advanced. It would show me the properties for that. So in this case I'm going to select domain computers from here, and as you can see I can set certain permissions on this one. So I'm going to allow the permission for read of this group, and then I'll select the permission from here as deny for apply group policy. Once that's done, I'll apply. It would say that the permissions would deny the entry, say OK, and the first section it was selecting read, press OK, and then press and then click on your group policy object, which was the OU on this one. So you can see the group policy which is enabled over here. Now in order to further work on it, we'll right click on this one and we'll select the option as. We'll be able to see that we have this link policy enabled. It means that all computers or the devices that we have in this OU will have this policy. Now this is a bulk of the group policy editor of a Windows server when we can define computers and user settings. Now keep in mind that computer settings are applied when workstation would be on, and when the user settings will be applied after the user would be logged into the computer. Now there are handful settings here that we'll define, and they'll really control the experience of the workstation on the domain. This is commonly used to control the things such as, but not limited to, desktop background, their browser settings, password policies, network shares, printers, redirects, and the folders, etc. Applications that would be added to the allow list policies, or the login scripts will be used in order to block access to certain things. Now let's play around a little bit with the policy that we have over here. So in order to edit the policy that we recently created, we'll right click on it, we'll go to edit, and we for example would like to remove the recycle bin from the desktop of the user. So whoever is connected to this part of the policy, whenever they would log in, they'll not be able to see the recycle bin on their desktop. So in order to enforce that, once we are over here, we'll go to the user configuration, and under the user configuration we are going to collapse the policies. Then we can check and expand it a little bit so that we can see it clearly. We can expand other settings on this one, depends what you're trying to do. But in our case, we'll go to the administrative template, and in administrative template, since the recycle bin is there on the desktop, we'll expand it, and then we'll double click on this one so that we can see the options which are there under the desktop. You'll be able to see remove the desktop icon from the desktop. At the moment, if it's saying not configured, it means that it's not configured. You can double click on you can double click on the remove desktop icon. I think I sorted it, and then click it again and remove recycle bin icon from the desktop. Double click on it and click enable. So now the policy is enforced, and you can see that the state change for this one as enabled. If you really want to read that what this policy would do, there is a write-up on this one. So you can click OK, and it's enforced on the users which are following in that specific policy. So now let's try to check that if the policy is really enforced or not. So if you remember, we created the accounts on our Active Directory where we had different users on this one as Elise. So let's try to log into Elise on our workstation and see that if Elise has that recycle bin on the desktop or not. Now, as you can see, we are logged into Elise account, and we are not able to see the desktop recycle bin on. Now, if you would like to see that which policy is enforced on Elise computer, so you can click start or go to run and type cmd, press enter, and here we'll type in gp result and /r. So it would load the policy, and it would show you that which policy is enforced on this one. So as you can see, it's telling about the workstation, the details about it, the domain name, and then here you can see the applied group policy object as sys255 that we enforce from our domain. Now likewise, let's try to create a computer policy and see how it would affect the computers on our network. Now when we are going to create a computer policy, just keep in mind that unlike user policy that are associated with the logged on users, the computer policies are applied before the login and would affect the entire system, and thus any logged in users would be able to see the change on it. Now since we are trying to apply a group policy, let's try something. When we'll sign out Elise from her account, the problem is that her details would remain here, but on our network we don't want the name of the users to appear on the screen so that the other users cannot check that who was actually working on these computers. So we would try to create a policy which would disable this thing, that if anyone else would sign out, their details will not remain on the screen, so that it would show a blank screen and user will be able to have a clear start from there. So we are on our domain once again, and since we are trying to create a policy for the computers which are there on our OU of computers, so I'll right click on this one, I'll create a new policy over here, and I'm going to name it as disable last login, and then I'll press OK. So now you can see that there is a policy appearing under it which would say that it would disable the computer's last login on the computers. So now in order to continue on this one, we'll double click on disable last login. Now we have authenticated users over here. First of all, we'll remove it from there because it's not about authenticated users. We want to apply it to the domain computer. So instead we'll click here and we'll type in domain computers, press enter, so it would be applied on domain computers. Once that's done, we'll right click on this policy, and we'll click edit, and then we'll go to our settings. Since it's related to computers, so we will be looking under computers, and we'll go to the policies. Let's expand it a little bit. So then we are going to select Windows settings since it's related to Windows, and then I guess we are going to go to security options, and then we are going to select local policies, and in local policies we'll click on security options, and you can expand it a little bit so that you can see. And in interactive logon, do not display last sign in, I'll click on this one, and I can define this one as enabled. So now it has enabled the policy which would be enforced on the computer. So once that's done, you can close this one, and if you want to see, for example, the policies that you have applied and how can you check it, you can click on either of them. For example, if we are going to click on the desktop thing, you can click on details, and then you can go to settings, and here you'll be able to see the things that you have enabled. If you click on show all, it would show you the policy like this one over here that you have enabled. So from this one you can see that which policies are being enforced under this specific group policy. We can do the same on disable last login, and here also if we'll show all, we'll be able to see the settings that we made and then the setting that we have enabled over here. Now whenever we'll do anything like that and we'll have to enforce the policy on the computers, we'll have to log into the computer and push the policy, or we can force the policy from our domain controller as well. In order to do that, first thing is that you can click start, go to PowerShell, and make sure that you are logged in as the administrator. So I have the Windows PowerShell over here. I'll right click on it and go to run as administrator, and I can pass in a command over here which is gp update /force. So that would force the group policy to all computers on my network. We can do the same thing, slightly different, on our computers which are there on the domain, which are the clients. We'll be doing it shortly on Ellie's computer. So now we are here on Ellie's computer. Let's click start, type PowerShell, and then right click on this one, run as administrator. We'll provide our domain credentials. So for that we'll type in gp result scope and then computer, and we'll type R, and it would generate a report and it would show us the policy that we have enforced. And as you can see in this one the policy is enforced at disabled last login, applied group policies here, and default domain policy is enforced on it as well. Now once that's done, and if we'll sign out, let's see if we'll be able to see Ellie's account. No, we cannot. So our policy is enforced, and that's how we use the policies on this computer. I hope it was clear. So that was our tutorial today on Active Directory group policy. How can we manage it and how can we enforce it on the computers? That's it for today. Thank you very much.